Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We are on episode 8 of Neon Genesis Evangelion. Oh, so some fun things about the last episode. I talked for nearly 2 hours about the last episode. And then I've had several people be like, oh, it's gonna get worse. I'm like, But I did have some comments about episode 8. And I did have a couple people point out some interesting things. First of all, episode 7 is one of my favorite episodes so far in this series. I loved it. It was it's definitely a transition episode. It feels like a transition episode between episode 6 and whatever this next arc or second stage is with the series. But several people in the comments were noting that a lot of people consider episode 7 like a filler episode. I was like, I feel like some pretty relevant things still happen in that episode, and it's setting up character development that should be relevant, but And some people said it was their least favorite in the series, and I'm like, that's exciting, because if this is my favorite episode so far, and it's a lot of people's least favorite, we still got like so many episodes to go. I'm excited. That makes me feel great. I'm like, cool. So it's all uphill from here, right? Right? I had dinner with my brother a few days ago, and I've sworn him to secrecy. I was like, no Evangelion spoilers, none of that. But all he asked, he's like, okay, well, I got a question. He's like, what do you think of Nerve so far? And I'm like, and before I even thought about it, I was like, super sketch. And he just went, mm-hmm. And that's all he did. And I was like, ah! So yeah, I definitely feel like Nerve is still very sketchy, which I'll talk about with some of the comments below. But I had a couple comments from episode 6 and episode 7. So Nitinol notes about how we talked in the comments about the role of women in the 90s in science. And I feel like there was a lot of misogyny in episode 7 with that one guy at the press conference at the dinner table scene where he was basically just talking down to Akagi and mansplaining, and I was like, oh my gosh. But Nitinol had a really cool point, and these two comments are going to kind of be sort of binaries of each other, but Nitinol was talking about how it's funny because at the conference scene where they have the dinner tables and everything, there's not a lot of women present. It's mostly men. And whenever Akagi gets up to speak, they kind of mock her and talk down. They're like, oh, the famous Dr. Ritsuko Akagi. And they really just don't treat her as she's an equal at the table, right? And then Nitinol was like, you look at Nerve, and there's Akagi, there's Misato, who's pretty high up in the ranks and is a take charge person within the ranks. There's other female characters that you see that are high up in the chain of command, like helping to work and function in the EVA units. Rei is a pilot of the EVA, and she's a woman. So it's interesting to see Nerve as kind of like this progressive unit in terms of, a gender equality. And then you have that compared with like the other associations that we see at the conference scene. It's sort of the opposite. So I was like, that's really interesting. And it kind of ties into Christopher Peterson's note about Christopher Peterson was like, at the end of the episode, I talked about how Nerve versus the Jet Alone company, how they were kind of very different from each other. And I felt kind of glad when the Jet Alone man kind of got, his comeuppance. But Christopher Peterson notes, that's great. But then also you have Nerve, who is, and the way you phrase this, Christopher, I have to read it because it was just, the phrasing was wonderful. This extra governmental entity without any oversight, seemingly above the law, with huge amounts of public spending given to them, asking for more, actively sabotaging a parallel effort to save humanity, led by a shady character that seemingly can't openly muster compassion or any human connection with his own son. I was like, yeah. Nerve's got some problems. It's like, on the one hand, Nerve is being progressive, and Misato and Akagi prove that you don't have to be a man or a woman to be effective at your job and to be competent. And then on the other hand, they're shady and possibly hiding something massive. So what do we do? But I thought it was really funny how the last episode was framed. Again, lots of character development, little sprinklings of lore and mystery about the Evas. And like, it just felt a lot of important notes and foreshadowing that I feel are going to be brought back up in future episodes. So I loved episode 7. It's one of my favorites so far. It is my favorite so far out of all of them. I like episode 6 a lot. And the ending of episode 6 and the whole build-up is great. But episode 7 was like, it was my jam. So we'll see if that carries on with episode 8. 8's my lucky number, but usually my rule of 8 is when you have like a short series, like 11 to 12 episode series, and this is 26 episodes. So I don't think my rule of 8 will apply to this series, but I always, 8's my lucky number, so I always look forward to the 8th episode and hope that it's a good one. So maybe it will be here too, but we've talked enough. Let's go ahead and start this episode and see what happens. So thank you all for the comments. I really appreciate it. I hope you all enjoy the reaction, but we're going to start episode 8 of Neon Genesis Evangelion, and we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh, this episode was really good. Oh my god. We finally met her. It took 8 episodes. 8's my lucky number. We finally met Asuka. Ray was decisively absent this episode. I think that Asuka and Shinji will be fine. They seem kind of like opposites, but it's more of those like opposites attract sort of thing. It's very weird. It's a very weird scenario because I feel like Asuka and Shinji will get along fine, but I feel like Shinji will have a closer relationship with Ray. So we're going to talk about these 3. Our second child is officially Asuka. I want to get this where it looks right. And then they're still looking for the 4th child, apparently, supposedly. And then well, there's just a bunch of stuff going on. And then Kaji's in on this. This guy, Kaji, who at first I was like, man, he's really charming and hot. And now I'm like, now he's super sketch. So, man, this episode, I say episode 7 was my favorite. And then this episode comes along and I'm like, oh, this is what y'all are talking about. Oh, okay, fine. The rest of the season is going to be crazy like this. There's so much that happens this episode. It's kind of insane, and I'm kind of here for it. But, oh, buddy, we got a lot to talk about. I'm excited. So I'm going to put up here, we're going to have, let me see here. We got Asuka. We've got old Asuka here, and we have Shinji kind of in the middle here, and we have Ray. Yeah. Which is kind of funny because Shinji's kind of our middle ground, oddly enough. He's got this like quiet kind of depressive demeanor like Ray, but then he can get fired up. Last episode he was getting fired up at Misato, kind of like Asuka. So Shinji's kind of like in a middle ground. We'll talk about all of these characters here, but man, so at this point, we're in the second stage. I don't know if we'll have a second core for the series or if the entire OP is going to be the entire show, but we are getting more imagery now that we're getting into the series proper. We're getting more imagery that's tying to the OP, and I'm like, okay, now we're getting into things. Interestingly enough, I find it fun that we have the colors blue and red in the OP. And blue, I associate more with Ray, kind of like as a cool color. And then red, Asuka, girl. Like, there was so much symbolism with the color red in this episode. It was kind of amazing. I loved it. But yeah, so we have Asuka, Ray, and Shinji. We have our 3 children now. All right, the gang is assembled, huh? Our 3 EVA units. I find it interesting that we have the 3rd child, that they start with the 0 unit and then 1 and 2. So that part's interesting to me. Like, I guess the 0 unit is the interesting part because usually you start with 1, right? You don't start with 0. When you start counting things, you always start with like 1, 2, 3. But here they start with 0. So it almost makes Ray seem like less than the others. It's like she's the main prototype. I don't know. But we got Adam introduced in this. So that's fun. We got Adam involved, and then the Evangelions, it's Eve, and then that little petri dish thing was the Adam thing. All right. And then we got their Asuka at the end. Okay. I absolutely love it. I'm all for it. So then we got a scene with these 3. Okay, I'm going to go back to that OP because I want to see it now. Yeah, that one guy, the one guy that's with Misato and Akagi, that is so Kaji. So there was our original 3 characters there. Okay. And so over here, we have Misato, and we have Akagi, and we have Kaji that look like our original 3. Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but that necklace that Kaji has on looks like it could be the cross that Misato ends up having. they got history. These two have history. I'm here for it. I was totally shipping Misato and Akagi. I was totally shipping them. But then I went on a whirlwind of ships with Misato in this episode because I had been shipping Akagi with Misato. And then when we find out that Misato doesn't know as much as Akagi, and Akagi may know some very sketchy things that could hurt Misato in the future, I was like, oh, maybe I don't ship him. And then this Kaji guy shows up, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to ship Misato and Kaji, and then Kaji turns out to be sketch, and I'm like, well, damn it. so yeah, let's go ahead and put in here that Akagi and Kaji are working with Gendo and Nerve. Okay, they're in thick. Kaji seems in almost thicker than Akagi is. And then poor Misato is with Nerve, but she's just been tasked with watching Shinji. She really is not in on the whole Adam thing. The first human. Okay. Okay. I don't know how I feel about that, but we'll get to it. But yeah, so Kaji's one of the original three. Sure thing. And so then, yeah, we get that little shot of Shinji smiling at the end there. So yeah. So, God, this episode, I felt like the moment we start, anytime we start with a conversation with Gendo in this episode, I'm like, we are in for a trip, aren't we? Because when Gendo's setting stuff up and we bookended with Gendo too, things are happening. So yeah, correct. I've arranged it with the committee. The cargo left from Sasebo port yesterday and is now making its way across. So that's funny because it's like, okay, is the cargo, originally I thought he was talking about the EVA unit from Germany coming to Japan, but it could still be that, or he could have been talking about the Adam sample that was coming in the little protective Jurassic Park style, like carrying case with the cryogenics and all that fun stuff. So, okay. So that's really probably what they were talking about was the Adam specimen. Okay. So meanwhile, old UN's aircraft here going to fly over to see the EVA unit that's coming to Japan. Asuka's EVA unit. I'm going to make Asuka red because girl needs, that is her color. You wouldn't think red hair and red would go together, but it fits Asuka very well. And her fiery personality, right? So, speaking of which, the color red has a very big prominence in this. Toji's the only one that didn't get the memo to wear red in this episode. Toji's the only one wearing purple and black. But you have Ida's wearing the red. Misato's wearing the red. I think even Kaji's tie is red. And then Shinji at one point wears the suit alongside Asuka. So, yeah, everybody except Toji got the memo. But yeah, so of course, Ida brings the camcorder and is taking the videos, being like, it pays to have friends in high places so I can take all my footage of this. Like, this is Ida's dream, right? And so he's like, this is what friends are for, right, Shinji? And Shinji's like, I love that Shinji's like, I love that Shinji's just like, is this really what friendship is for? Is this the only reason you guys are friends with me is to hang out with Misato and ride in these aircrafts? Is that all I am to you as a meal ticket? I was like, I love that Shinji's like, what are you talking about? And Misato's the one who said, I figured you'd get claustrophobic looking at the same mountains day after day. So it's just a class field trip. It's just a field trip to this potentially dangerous situation with this EVA unit out on the sea. No worries. I invited you on a date since it's a Sunday. And then, of course, Toji's like, oh, is it a real date? So the question is this a date between Misato and Kaji alone? Or is it also a date between... It seems like it was a date for Asuka to meet Shinji. Seems like this was a date for Asuka to meet the other pilot. Okay. I feel like poor Rei... I don't know how Rei is going to respond to Asuka. I really don't. I feel like Rei, for the most part, relates to Shinji. I mean, there is a part, I think, that relates to Shinji because he's similar to her in terms of personality. But there's also that whole thing with Shinji being like Gendo and Rei loving Gendo. So that's why she relates more and gets along with Shinji. I feel like that's more of the situation. But I don't see Rei and Asuka getting along at all. I think they're far too different. Like, Asuka is totally opposite of Rei. Like, she's opposite of Shinji, but she is totally opposite of... She seems like she relates to me a lot to Misato. Like, she seems like she knows, she's gung-ho. She is the protagonist mentality. I can get now why a lot of the promotional material had Asuka on the cover and had her as the promotional character, because she acts like the main character of the series. She's gung-ho. She's like, let's do this. Let's get this EVA unit. She wants to prove herself. So that's a very, before we get any further, that's a very interesting note, is that she is very gung-ho, wants to prove herself, right? And she wants to fight. And she notes that it is a chance to prove her worth, right? And she has a lot of pride in being a pilot of the EVA. And she's very skeptical of Shinji, right? It's such a stark contrast to, you have Shinji, who was very reluctant and was forced into this position and only did it out of obligation, but it became the want of protecting others, right? So for Shinji, being a pilot of the EVA unit is really, it's a very selfless position. He's not really doing it for himself at all. He's the only reason he's going through with any of this is because there's people he cares about that are potentially in danger, and he's like, I'm doing it for them. But he's not really doing it for himself at all. Asuka seems to be doing it for herself. She's like, no, this is my chance to prove myself and to prove my worth and to be a hero. Like, she is doing it for seemingly selfish reasons. We don't know much about Asuka other than this first impression we get of her, but she seems like polar opposite vibes from Shinji. And then you have Rei, that we don't really know Rei's motivation other than it was an order, and she has nothing else but her duty. Okay, and then her connection with Gendo. And he's tied to like her whole purpose with everything. I'm not going to say that Asuka is more adjusted to living than Rei and Shinji, because we don't know that much about her, but I'm guessing she is, because she seems to like be on the up and up a little bit more than Rei and Shinji. She seems a little bit more mature for her age, even if she is only 14. She seems to be more mature for her age, and she's been training, and that's the other thing too. She has been training for an indeterminate amount of time we don't know about, whereas Shinji just walked into it. And that's kind of how she's impressed. She doesn't really get impressed by Shinji until Kaji tells her that he was able to sync up so quickly, and then she's like, oh wow. So that's when she gets impressed by him. And she assumes that Shinji is just like any other boy and is a pervert, and Shinji's like, oh, no, I'm not. That's the funny thing, is that Shinji's not a pervert. Shinji's like the most like prudish kid. He's not. And she just assumes that he is because his friends are. So interesting. So yeah, Toji asks if it's a real date, and Shinji's like, And he's like, I bought this cap just for today, Miss Misato. And it's like, are you serious? And I love that Shinji's just like, oh my God. So where are we headed? I feel like Shinji and Misato at this point, they're siblings. Misato is like the big sister to Shinji, because Shinji's actions in this entire episode are the actions of a brother, the actions of a sibling. That when the best friend, it's like the best friends are flirting with my sister. This one guy's flirting with my sister and possibly has history with my sister. Like, Shinji's actions are just like, are we just there yet? I love it. It's very, very cool. We're taking a little jaunt across the Pacific on this gorgeous cruise ship. So we see the fleet, 5 aircraft carriers and 4 battleships. What a fleet. Yeah, it's really crazy that they've all come to bring the EVA unit. All right. And then this is really what friends are for. And I love that Shinji's just like, oh God, like so skeptical. That's your gorgeous cruise ship. She sure is gorgeous. The pride of the UN, the glorious regular carrier over the rainbow. Funny. I love that. It's huge. I love that Misato looks so fondly at that. I love that, because Ida would know. Ida like memorizes all the military like lingo and terms and stuff, and he would know the history because he's really passionate about that. But I just love how fondly Misato looks at it. Like Misato was younger before the second impact, so she knows what life was like before it. So this is probably, if she was in the military or was a pilot herself back in the day, she would have ties to this carrier. So her looking fondly at it, she has history there. I love that. I love it that she gets so passionate about it here. She's like, I'm surprised that such a relic is still afloat. And they're like, it's not so bad. It's a vintage model from before the second impact. And you wouldn't think, because the second impact was 15 years ago. So when they say vintage, it's probably from like the late it's 2016, so it's probably from like late 90s, 2000s in this world, which you wouldn't think that'd be vintage, but I saw a student the other day and they had a really nice handbag, and I was like, oh, that handbag's really cute. And they were like, oh, thanks. They're like, it's vintage 2005. And I about threw up. So I was like, it's like 2005's vintage to you? So yeah. So you get, it's interesting. But I like that Misato is like looking at these relics from the past and realizing their value, and Ida realizes their value because he knows all about the history behind them. But Toji and Shinji are just like, oh, it's huge. They don't quite get it like Ida and Misato do. And so then we have the people aboard the ship that are like, give me a break. Here comes the socket for that kid's toy. Which is like the plug, right? The life support. What a child's errand. I love that we see her standing aboard the ship. Oh my God. I love that she's watching them crash down. She has the yellow dress on. So iconic. What an iconic like entrance, right? And then, yeah, we see the sunlight. Oh, I'm going to get that. That's probably going to be the thumbnail, is the sunlight like going over her and her long hair flowing. That's probably gonna be, as much as I love the shots of her and Shinji together, I'll probably do like a Twitter post about that, about the shots of her and Shinji. But that shot right there with the dress and everything, it's iconic. I love it. I love it. I loved Asuka from that moment. I was like, oh, our fiery redhead. I'm ready, y'all. I love it. So yeah, so we get aboard this battleship, and they got all the planes and everything that are going to be thrown into the ocean very soon. Whew. But yeah, they do a real big thing to show just the massive scope and scale of all of these carriers and battleships. And then in 10 minutes from now, they're all going to get picked apart like children's toys. So it's a fun little, kind of twist on a trope there, because Toji says real men shed tears for this kind of thing. Again, we all talk about that whole thing with masculinity that gets brought up in this talk about masculinity and the whole thing about real men shed tears over military equipment. We're going to put equipment as our military carriers equipment. We're going to just blanket all that term there. Okay. I will make note that something this series does that is pretty cool is it sort of not subverts, but it twists the way that the masculinity is projected and assigned to different people. Like we've talked about with Misato in the last several episodes, Misato takes on a very masculine role in the last several episodes. She's the one that is like the competent in battle, like leader, is the one that does like the manly things in the house, like just sitting there drinking beer and not caring about anything and being kind of a slob, is just like the one that's hyper competent in their job and is able to like go in and make these tough decisions, like doesn't cry but gets super like hyped up and amped on the mission. Like that's usually stuff that's regulated to a male character in a lot of action movies and not a female character. And so for Misato to get that role, it's interesting. And then you have Asuka, who kind of is like your typical male protagonist in a shonen anime, who's like, I'm the hero, I'm gung-ho, even though she's in this like feminine dress and she's like, stay away, you perverts. She's a really cool character because she has that angle to her, but then she has like the shonen male protagonist thing where she's like, get inside the robot and let's do this. And then Shinji comes in, and Shinji has been relegated a lot of, gendered female kind of traits, like doing the house cleaning and being the worrywart and things like that stereotypically go to a female character. Shinji gets those. So it's interesting to see him and Asuka kind of play off of each other. and these like masculinity tropes being assigned in this episode. It's interesting. But yeah, so we see this like military tech all being geared out. Ida's losing his mind over it. And I love that of course, all the pilots and stuff are men. And they're all just like smiling at these kids, like running around being like, oh, look at these boys just gaping at everything. Isn't that funny? Ha ha ha. Like we see that, and Toji loses his hat. And Shinji is like just stretching unimpressed. Shinji's like, yep, here we are. Shinji is not performing to the male, trope here, the masculine trope. Shinji is not performing alongside it. You have all these guy pilots and Ida and Toji losing their mind with all this stuff around them, and Shinji just doesn't seem to care, right? So it's a funny play on that. And then Misato is just like, so here's the thing, Misato is walking through with her, pulling her hair down, like she doesn't want to get it like wind blown or anything. So at the time I was like, why is Misato looking so weird there? But if she thought she was going to meet Kaji, maybe she was trying to like make her hair look really good to see him. Again, it's funny because Misato usually has all these masculine attributes to her, but clearly Misato and Kaji have history. And she is very much, she does the very like, oh yeah, I don't have a crush on you, blah, 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 blah. But she does. It's very clear that she likes him. And it's very obvious because at the end when he has the plane, she thinks he's going to go save them and he runs away. Which again, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that whole role reversal there. But yeah, he grabs a hat. Damn it. And then he's going for the hat, but who steps on it? I love that she steps on it and crushes it. Asuka. Again, this is why Toji is terrified of her at the end of the episode. He's like, oh god, she's going to be in class with us. This girl looks like she would castrate a pig with her bare hands. Right? And he's just like, oh, and he gets mad. He's like, that's my new hat. And she's like, don't care. And she's like, how have you been? Fine. You've grown some, haven't you? So Misato knows Asuka from before. Like maybe when she was a child, maybe when she was first hired to be the pilot. Because her name indicates that she's maybe half Japanese and half German. Possibly. But yeah, so Misato knows her from the past. Okay. You're not just... And she says, I'm not just taller, my figure's filled out as well. So, let's backtrack here and talk about... This episode does a lot of things with like masculinity versus feminine expectation. All right? So, what is expected is with you have Ida and Toji and how they oogle over Misato, and how they basically are all about the weaponry and the military tech, right? And then you have Misato, who is the competent strategist in the midst of this whole battle thing. And then you have, I'm going to put Asuka kind of rides the line between both, because you have Asuka, who is very assertive and very, has the whole thing about wanting to be a hero and being brave. But then also you have Asuka, who makes the comment about her own femininity, about her own figure, and how she shies away from male seeming affection, or at least physicality. Okay. So, yeah, because she's the one that says my figure's filled out as well, right? And then Misato's like, don't care, let me introduce you. This is the second child. Uh-huh. And Asuka Langley Soryu. Okay. I'm assuming the Langley is a German. And so, yeah, and I like this moment. So her dress rides up. But here's the thing. The girl's been on a ship for how long? She should know that was going to happen. She should have known that dress was going to fly up in the wind. But I'm sure she wore it just to prove a point about her femininity, right? And about her body and everything. And Toji's the one that sees it. I like that Ida has the camcorder. So he's recorded all of this, for better or worse. And then she slaps all of them. Asuka arrives in Japan. And I like that he broke the camera. Yeah. And so Ida crying, and Toji's mad, and then Shinji's like, what did I do to deserve this? Right? I love you got a black eye. That's the viewing fee. Quite a bargain, don't you think? He's like, well, then take a look at this. And I'm like, I can't believe Toji just like dropped Trow right there. And then Shinji and Ida are like, oh my God. And so which one is the famous third child? And don't tell me that was him. Okay, so I thought she's like, don't tell me that the third child was the guy I just slapped twice. And Misato's like, no, it's him. And Shinji's just like, I love this. Asuka's like, he looks kind of dull. Shinji's like, well, thanks, Asuka. His look, he gets a good grumble face, and Shinji just has this look like, well, thanks. So, oh my God, we got Katsuragi Misato. We have Misato's ID card. I think it should be noted that her blood type is AO, that her we do not get her measurements at all, and we don't get her weight either. We know that she's 163 centimeters tall. We don't get her age. We don't get, it looks like, we can't see her age. That's frustrating. We don't get her age, weight, any measurements. No. She's like, you guys don't get you just get to know how tall I am and my blood type. Funny that. She just taken a Sharpie, marked out the rest of it. And then the guy on the ship. So here's the other thing too. So there is this, we talked about the misogyny in the conference room in the last episode. It kind of carries over to here because she's the leader of this nerve operation, which is, yeah, it's a government organization that's really shady. But I don't think that this captain of this ship, if it were the other way around, and let's say Kaji was the one that brought Shinji and the other boys, I don't think that the ship captain would have said, well, I thought you were the leader of this gang of Boy Scouts. I don't think he would have said that to Kaji if Kaji had showed up. I could be wrong. But that whole air that this guy has when he first talks to her, it just reeks of just, oh, you're a woman. You've come here. You don't understand how things work. It just had that air, even though she's in, whenever Misato dresses up in like the military garb, she's there to be serious, right? And I like that Toji's looking over at Misato dreamily. Ida has the camcorder and is still videotaping. Asuka's looking straight at the captain. Shinji's looking over at her like, do you hear what this guy just said? And says, but it seems I was mistaken. Thank you for your understanding, Captain. She doesn't seem fazed by it, so maybe she didn't take it any way harmfully. It's like, thank you for giving me the opportunity to babysit some kids. Uh-huh. Yeah, again, I don't think this guy would have been like this. And she's like, and Misato takes it in stride. Misato's like, this guy's kind of an ass, but it's okay. She's like, we appreciate your assistance in the transport of Unit 2. And so here are the specs for the emergency supply socket. Okay, so they brought the stuff over to make it work in case if there is an emergency that coincidentally happens while they're on the ship. Funny that. So in the first place, I haven't heard anything about activating that toy while at sea. Now, see, there's a little bit of, they just said when they were flying in that they were the socket, right? They knew they were coming with the parts and pieces to put it into functional use. So when the guy says, we didn't know anything about this, it's like, but you did, because you said that when they first came on. So, no. And then Misato, again, takes it in stride and says, well, don't you think of this as being prepared for an emergency? Like winking to the camera. That's why the Pacific Fleet is escorting it. So the guy thinks that the EVA unit's not necessary to be functional. And then he makes the comment, when did the UN Navy become a cargo service? So he's like, you guys aren't treating us as a serious, means of defense. To you, we're just delivering a toy to you, and that's going to be the thing that saves us all, but we're useless. It's kind of what he's implying. And that's kind of what Nerve wants everybody to think, that the EVAs are the only thing that can save them. And then that guy, they just throw so much shade at Misato in this. He's like, well, I didn't know we were just a cargo service. And this other guy says, I believe it was just after a certain organization was established. Meaning that the moment that Nerve came into being, the moment that Nerve was established, it tried to establish itself as the sole savior of humanity. And that the other military units are not going to be enough. So, yeah, that's just so much shade in that moment. Like, it's, if you're just listening And you're just going, oh yeah. But when you listen to the words they say, it's like, oh my gosh, that's pretty cruel. Quite a grandiose escort for transporting one single toy. After all, this is the entire Pacific Fleet. So that's the entire Pacific Fleet is 9 ships. That's it. That's all the UN's got. Okay. All right. The second impact had a pretty big impact on the military, clearly. But yeah, Ida's over there still filming everything. It's still not enough considering the importance of the EVA. Okay. And so, would you sign this document? I love that she just shows up kind of like an Amazon carrier, be like, will you sign this package saying that we've gotten the package safely? Will you sign this, please? Not yet. The EVA unit and its pilot have been entrusted to us by the 3rd branch in Germany. And I love that you can't just do as you please. And I love that Asuka is so proud in that moment. She's like, I'm important. Like, I love that. She has just that little hint of pride. And Shinji's like, you're really happy about all this. It's very curious. And then Misato's like, well, then when will you transfer? And they're like, once we've unloaded. Okay. The ocean is our jurisdiction. You will follow our orders here. So yeah, this is just like a power play. He's just like, Misato's coming being like, we want to have control of the EVA unit in case of some emergency happens. And so we just need you to sign off saying we're good to go. And these guys are like, no, we control these seas. We're not just going to let you have your way, lady. And it's like... And Misato, again, takes it in stride and says, I understand. However, should I remind you that just in case of the emergency, Nerve's authority overrides yours. And Shinji's eyes get like really big in that moment. Like, oh, okay. Like, we're gonna do this, huh? And then Toji's like, oh, she's cool. Yeah, Misato like just manages to get that last little burn in. Just a little bit. And then Shinji says she's practically like Miss Ritsuko. So yeah, in that moment, yeah, Misato acts a lot like Akagi. They're like calm and cool. It's probably the calmest and coolest we've seen Misato, and it's a lot different than when they were at the conference. But my theory is that when they were at the conference, Akagi was there. And Akagi's kind of like a buffer. So when Akagi's there, Misato can afford to be kind of like grumbly and frustrated because Akagi keeps her cool. But when Akagi's not there, Misato has to keep her cool. And plus, they are out on the open waters. Misato's probably like, we may need their help, so I really don't want to piss these guys off because they're really all we've got. So she's like, even though they're being dicks, I'm going to go along with it. And then that's where we have, you're as gallant as ever. And Misato, okay, so here's the thing. Misato's like, and Asuka blushes and says, Kaji. And this guy shows up with the red tie. So, Asuka is crushing over here on Kaji. Rei is crushing over here on Gendo. And Shinji is just being siblings with Misato. Shinji's not crushing on Misato. No, for the record. Not at all. They're more like siblings. But yeah, the girls are crushing on the older male characters in their life that have it. Here's the thing, too. The two men, Kaji and Gendo, they're not pervy teenage boys that are all up on them. So, of course, them being teenage girls and wanting to get away from all that, of course they would gravitate towards the more mature men that aren't doing that. But Kaji, he's this smooth operator with the 5 o'clock shadow and the hair in the ponytail coming in all suave. I don't blame Misato a bit. Mr. Kaji, I don't recall inviting you onto the bridge. Yeah, Misato's like, are you joking? But Misato's face is not the face of Asuka. Her face is the one, it reminds me a lot of Chuya and Dazai from Bungo Stray Dogs. The relationship vibe I get with Misato and Kaji is very much Chuya and Dazai. I get that relationship vibe of, I hate you, but we have history, but I also love you and I hate you. So that's kind of like the vibe I get from them. Because her face just looks disgusted to see him. She's like, and she drops the nerve file. And she's like, excuse us, we're counting on you to escort us back to New Yokosuka as ordered. And then Toji's like, this is a date? Oh my God. And then, of course, Ida's like, this is too awesome. Ida's just like, it's like all of the naval porn has like come to Ida. He's just loving it. And the captain says, shit, those kids are really going to save the earth. And the other guy says, yeah, the times are changing. I understand that Congress has also pinned its hopes on that robot. On that toy, the idiots. And so there's this interesting conversation here where the captain says if they've got the money for it, they should give it to us. So that begs the question too of why put money into the EVA project? Yeah, the military's like, if they've got the money, why don't they give it to us? Why are they using it on themselves? For reasons, right? For reasons. Yeah, it's interesting. And of course they tease us with it. It's great. So we have, what are we doing here? Okay, we have the elevator. Oh my gosh. So in the elevator, this is great. You have Ida, who still has the camcorder, still taking all of the footage. Toji is pushed up against the glass. Asuka is like not happy to be here. Poor Shinji is shoved into Misato's boobs, into her bosom. He can't help it. And Kaji's like on the other side of the door being like, what? He's like, accompanying her. I'm accompanying Asuka. I'm on a business trip from Germany. And Misato's like, I was careless. I should have anticipated this. Like she didn't want to see Kaji. And she's like, don't touch me. And he's like, I can't help it. Okay. For someone that can't help it, when we go to the next scene here, he is totally playing footsie with her under the table. Like, just, he's doing it. She's just like, like, you see his foot. And everybody's staring at the two of them, right? And you see his foot just sitting there bumping hers. And he's like, I miss this. Seeing anyone right now? Oh my God. And she's like, and that would be your business. Why? I was so captivated by the fact that they were playing footsie under the table that I missed that he asked her if she was seeing anyone. And she's like, and it would be your business. Why? What? And he's like, what? You're kind of cold. And she's like, And he's like, I hear that you're living with Katsuragi. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, it goes over to Shinji. And Shinji's like, yes. So this part is probably one of my favorite parts of the episode, is that Shinji's just like, yeah, I'm living with her. Everything's fine. And then him saying, does she still toss and turn in bed? Oh my God. One of my favorite shots this whole episode. And of course, Shinji doesn't get it. Shinji doesn't get it. Everybody, Misato is mortified. Toji and Ida and Asuka are like, oh my God, the implications. Shinji doesn't get it because our boy has no idea about anything sexual. I mean, he knows about relationships. He knows about the opposite sex, but I don't think he gets what Kaji's throwing down, that they've had history. And Shinji's just like, what? And Misato's like, oh my God. I love the shot. And she just slams down the table. The coffee goes everywhere. She's so red. And he's just like, oh my God. I get such Dazai vibes from Kaji. Such Dazai vibes. If Dazai was based off this character, I wouldn't be surprised. Oh my God, what are you saying? And he's like, so she hasn't changed, has she, Mr. Shinji Ikari? And she's like, don't listen to him. I love that she turns to Shinji like, don't let him corrupt you. God, I love their dynamic. I love their dynamic so much. I'm worried because of how sketchy he is at the end of this, but I love their dynamic so much. And again, Shinji has no idea. He's like, well, Shinji has no clue. He's like, wait, how do you know my name? Goes right over our boy's head. He's like, how do you know me? And he's like, of course I do. You are famous in our business. Yeah, the third child who piloted an EVA in battle with no training. And Asuka looks back at him like she's jealous, like, you got to go into battle and you had no training, you know? So I get the implication that Asuka has been training for quite some time to get prepared for battle, and so she's jealous that Shinji just got to like walk into a battle. But it's like, honey, if you knew the existential dread and like circumstances that first battle was with Shinji, you wouldn't have that look on your face. Probably not. But yeah, but Kaji saying you're famous within our business it seems like there's more to it with that statement. Like, it's not just the fact that he was the third child that piloted the EVA unit, but that he's Gendo's son. So there's some stuff tied there that is not said, but is implied. And Shinji's like, oh, no, it was just luck. Like, no, please don't. Please don't think I had anything to do with that. It really was luck. I nearly died. And Asuka's just frustrated. And I like that we slowly zoom in on Asuka as that conversation happens. And she's just like, oh. And he says, luck is part of your destiny. It's your talent. Interesting. So Kaji tells him that luck is part of his destiny and talent. I don't know how. I guess luck can be a talent if you naturally can have things work out for you. In this post-apocalyptic world, I guess that would be something talented that you'd want to have. But yeah, Asuka's just like, this kid's a dull, boring kid. What's up with him? And Misato, I like that Toji and Ida are still flabbergasted that this girl has possibly had sexual relations with Kaji, and Misato's just like, oh my god, I can never show my face in public again. He's like, well, see you later. This gotta be a bad joke. No, a nightmare. My dirty laundry's getting aired in front of my little brother and everything. Oh my god. And so Asuka and Kaji have an interesting relationship. He almost seems like, it's weird because you have Misato being like a mentor to Shinji. You have Kaji being like a mentor to Asuka. The funny thing is that if you looked at these three as like the original trio, Akagi's not really a mentor towards Rei. Gendo, if anybody, seems to be more of her mentor, and he's not even really present around her a lot. So that part's interesting. But I definitely get the whole vibes that Kaji is to Asuka like what Misato is to Shinji. Only Asuka kind of has like the blushy face around Kaji because dude is hot. Dude is very hot. So he asks what she thinks about Mr. Shinji Ikari. And then Asuka's like, he's boring. What a disappointment. And he's like, oh, well, his sync IQ ratio is all 40% in combat with no training. And that gets her attention. She's like, no way. That gets her attention. So Shinji himself is like not her type at all. But the fact that he's good at battle is what gets her excited. She's like, oh, well, because that seems like what she's primarily focused on. So yeah, Toji is like, that captain's attitude gets on my nerves. Of course, Toji would be jealous of Kaji because Kaji's had it with Misato, right? And Ida seems over it, and Shinji's just like, I still don't understand what's going on. I love how oblivious Shinji is, just sitting there with his hand in his pocket. But then Misato says, she's like, oh, he's a proud man. And pride can make you sarcastic. Yeah, so this part's interesting. She's like, oh, he's proud, so he can be sarcastic. It's like she's trying to tell Toji, oh, don't pay any mind to him. He's just lying. It's not, he didn't really, sleep with me or anything. That's just, he's just, a proud man. It's just sarcasm. Ha ha ha. And then Shinji says, that Mr. Kaji is pretty lively and funny. And she's like, he hasn't changed at all, that jerk, that baka. Lively and funny. So yeah, Shinji thinks he's a great dude. He's like, wow, he seems really fun. And Misato's like, you don't know the half of it. Oh my god, I love it. It's so great. And then Asuka, hey, third child, come with me. Like, she won't call him Shinji yet. I love she's like on her hands and knees with the tarp. She's like, look at it. Isn't it a beaut? And he's like, oh, it's red. I didn't know that. And I love her. She's like, the color isn't the only difference. So after all, units 0, 1, and 0, 0 were part of a developmental process. Prototype and test type. The fact that it's synchronized with an untrained pilot like you is proof of that. So she's likening Shinji's synchronization with the O1 unit as not only being luck, but proof that it's just a prototype. It's not the real deal, right? And she's like, nah, this one. She's already like climbed up to the top of it. Girl. And he's just like, you might want to get down so you don't fall and break your leg. The Unit 2 is different. Created for actual combat conditions. This is the world's first true Evangelion. So she's like, my unit is the real deal. This is not a prototype. It's not a test run. This is the perfected version that I get to pilot. Gotcha. And she always has the red, things to synchronize with, she has them on all the time, almost as if she's like always ready to go, right? I love it. This is the final model. But we know already that they're creating like a Unit 6 somewhere elsewhere. So it's not the final model. That's interesting. Maybe it's the model that Unit 6 is based off of, so maybe it is the final model. But it's curious. I don't think that Asuka knows that there are other models being created. She probably thinks hers is the last one. And of course, Shinji's like, what was that? An undersea shockwave. The explosion was nearby. I love that both of them look at the same, like they both grapple hold of the rails the same way. And that's when the angel appears, coincidentally. Now, and Shinji like, could it be an angel? Yeah. And then we get confirmation that Asuka's never even seen an angel before. They're like, a real one. And Shinji's like, yeah, I faced a couple of those already. Fun times. But yeah, so it's funny that coincidentally it works out to where they have an emergency situation like Misato advised. But again, I don't think Misato is as privy to what's going on as Gendo and as Akagi and now Kaji know. I think Misato is being left out of the loop. She is just literally the designated babysitter of Shinji, which is sad. I'm sad because Misato is such a cool character and she's so competent and really good at her job. But we've established that of all these characters, Misato has the most heart. Misato is the most compassionate and invested in humanity, it seems, out of all these people. Gendo is not invested in humanity. Gendo is not invested in his own son. He's only invested in Rei, I feel, to use her, and because he knows that she'll get invested because of him. That's the only reason. He is not a compassionate person. Akagi says he doesn't know how to live. He doesn't know how to show human emotions. Gendo is like emotionally compromised. Then you have Akagi, and Akagi is a scientist and is somewhat emotionally removed. Asagi seems more of like an objective person, like this will objectively work, so let's do A, B, and C. Not because of emotions, but because of objective science. And then the Kaji guy seems like a coward. He seems like a coward that runs away and only sticks with stuff that's the most beneficial to him. That's the vibes I get off of him by the end of this, is that he's only out for himself. Kaji's only out for himself, Akagi's only out for science, and Gendo is only out for this objective that he's created. They don't care about really anybody else. And the only reason I think that Kaji is really invested in Asuka is because it's part of whatever plan Gendo's lined out. But Misato does care about humanity and does care about not only Shinji, but other people around her. So like her bringing Ida and Toji on the trip is for their benefit and also for Shinji's too. So Misato is the one out of all of these adult characters that we've interacted with. She's the one with the heart. And that makes me the most worried because that's why she's being left out of this, because these three, Akagi, Kaji, and Gendo, feel like they can sacrifice humanity for their own ends, where I don't think Misato would do that. And that makes me worried because characters like Misato, who are like cinnamon bun type characters in these types of shows, are usually in danger. So I don't like that. I don't get good vibes. But maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully Misato is perfectly fine. But I don't like the idea that she's not being let onto the plans like the others are. And now we know Kaji's involved. She's being the one left out. And I don't like that. I don't like that they don't trust her to whatever they are planning or whatever they are hiding from Misato has something to do with humanity and has something to do, I think, with the kids. And I think if Misato found out about it, she'd be really pissed off and would probably say something or do something because that's within her character. And I think that's why they're leaving her out. And that's terrifying. I don't like that at all. And so Shinji's like, we have to get back to Miss Misato. And Asuka's like, nah, this is my chance. She's like, no, I love that grin. She's just like, no, we're not going back to Misato. We're going to fight. I'm like, okay. Asuka strikes. Yep. So all these ships take formation in all of this to fight this angel. The Symboline's gone silent. Titus Andronicus can't locate the target. Okay, what in the hell is going on here? And Misato's like, oh, hey, Nerve's calling. Funny that. Yeah. Interested in info on the unknown enemy and the appropriate countermeasures. I love that Misato just pops in. She's like, hey, this girl who's got 2 thumbs and a plan right here. I love it. This is a combat situation. No non-essential personnel allowed. Again, like just the condescending attitude where they're like, she's clearly someone you want on your side in this, and they just totally dismiss her. And she's like, yeah, this is just my opinion, but I'd say this must be an angel attack. I just love that at that point, when they tell her she's non-essential personnel, she's like, actually, I love it. And then Ida coming in with the camera. I love it. She's like, just to throw this out there, probably an angel attack. Might want to do something about it before we all die. And so they have the ships firing, and she's like, it's pointless. It's not going to stop the angel. I find it interesting that this creature is something that normal military weaponry cannot destroy. It has to be the Evas. That part is interesting to me too. Like, why does it have to be the Evas that destroy it? Why indeed? And so then as this one ship blows up, we have Kaji looking out over the side of the ship and saying, he has in his hand something, he has like some kind of device or a pouch or something in his hand, maybe cigarettes, I don't know. But he says, so an AT field can't be penetrated with this kind of firepower. So he knows what the AT field is. Again, he seems like he knows what's up. He knows the lingo. He knows what's going on. Okay. And she's like, but why is an angel here? So yeah, Misato has no idea. She doesn't know. I'm sure Akagi and Gendo and them knew it was coming. And Kaji probably knew as well, because he just wanted to see it up close. Could it be after Unit 2? So why are the angels attracted to the Eva units? That's another question. That's interesting, because it does seem like it's looking for something. They make point of it. So my question being, why? Why do the angels seem to go after the Evas? Okay. That would kind of make sense why the angels were specifically going to Tokyo 3, if that's where the Eva units were. I don't know. The Eva units look like they are organic, and the angels, for the most part, other than our little triangular diamond-shaped one, look like they are organic. So, but the triangle one the pyramid had blood coming out of it, so we could assume it's organic too. So, could it be that the Evas are made from the angels? Maybe they've been angels that have been subverted and converted into these mechs, and so the actual original angels are now trying to find their own kindred and are trying to reclaim the angels that have been stolen from them. I don't know, but I'm assuming this series will find out. But yeah, so I love that Asuka's like, we gotta get changed. And I love that she has a duffel bag. She has a literal, God, the merchandising for this show just writes itself, because I'm like, I want that Eva duffel bag. I want an Eva Unit 2 duffel bag, please. Can I buy that now? And he's like, what's going on? And she's like, we gotta change, silly. I love that Shinji's sitting there just like, well, I always get stuck with these women changing around me. Okay. And he's just like, hey, what's going on? And she says, don't peep, you pervert. And he's like, sorry. She's like, why are all boys such perverted jerks? And it's like, I don't think Shinji's a perverted jerk, girl. You just don't realize that yet. And Shinji's just like, I'm not a jerk. I'm not perverted. Leave me alone. And the whole thing of squeezing the suit shut. Here we go, Asuka. Like her little pep talk to herself. Like, you got this. So meanwhile, we're firing all of the artillery at this angel, and it's not doing a damn thing. Why won't it sink? And then Ida's like, only an Eva can beat it. Or Toji says that. And so she hands the extra suit to Shinji, and Shinji's like, wait, what? And she's like, come on, let's go. You're coming with me. Oh my God, Shinji's like, why? And it's like, why did we change into these plug suits? Because we're getting into the Eva unit. She's like, what are you, stupid? We're going to beat it with my unit too. He's like, no, we don't have, don't we have permission from Miss Misato? And she's like, I can get permission after I've beaten it. So yeah, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission sort of situation. That's how Asuka rolls. I'm going to just action now, talk later. Okay, and Shinji's just like, So again, we have Shinji who has been ascribed a lot of feminine attributes in the series, he has to wear Asuka's suit. And is quite embarrassed about it. It's probably the first time we've ever really seen Shinji be embarrassed about something that has to do with sexuality. Is him having to wear her suit. A good thing they're about the same size. But I guess the suits are big and they just form fit, so I guess it wouldn't matter. She's like, now I'll show you how magnificent my piloting is up close and personal. Just don't disturb me. Again, a lot of male attributes from other like shonens and action series being ascribed to Asuka. Like she's the one like, just let me pilot, let me save the day, just stand back and look pretty and watch. And Shinji's the one like, I guess I'll do that. But yeah, so all these battleships are sinking and the Angel's just circling around them. And then yeah, Misato says, it's odd. It almost seems to be looking for something. Oh, or it's looking for it's looking for Adam. Oh, is it looking for the specimen? Oh, that could be it. Okay. Is it looking for quote unquote Adam? Interesting. Again, and then we have all the gear. We've got his bags and we've got his everything with all of his gear. And then he has the container that has Adam in it. Okay. For an angel to attack here isn't a little different from the deal we had. Oh, this is what the Unit 2 is for. And I've generously provided a second pilot as a reserve. Okay. So we go back to Kaji's room aboard the ship. He's got the single bed in the chair, and he's sitting in the chair backwards. He's got post-it notes with like red writing and marks through it on his bedroom thing and the radiator. So they had planned possibly for an angel attack, for him to be able to get out of there with Adam without anybody else noticing. So how could he get out of there with the goods and Misato not question him? Well, if there's an angel attack to distract everybody, that's how he's doing it. Aha! Okay. If worse comes to worse, escape by yourself. And he's got the binocular. Oh, he's like, I know. I love Kaji's smooth character so far, but I don't trust him at all. Like, I don't trust Kaji at all. No, he's in the same boat with Akagi and Gendo. And it's so hard because Kaji's so hot and he's so smooth, but I don't trust him. He seems snaky. So then, yeah, I love this whole thing with the LCL, the German. I love that it's German, right? And Shinji's thinking in Japanese, and it throws her off. I'm like, girl, you knew he was Japanese. Why didn't you just speak in Japanese from the start? But she wanted to prove, how impressive she was speaking German. She probably wanted to like prove it in this native language that Shinji didn't know, to be like, oh, look how impressive I am. And then Shinji was thinking Japanese, so she's like, threw the whole thing off. I told you not to disturb me. And he's like, what do you mean? She's like, you're thinking Japanese, thinking German. And he's like, I don't know German. So that's when she switches it. And he's like, Baum Kuchen. She's like, no. Idiot, just forget it. Switch the base language to Japanese. Okay, and I love that they have failure, which is error, right? And they start over, and Shinji's like, what did I do? I love poor Shinji. Shinji is so different in this series from everything else that I could have... Okay, what did the dialogue say before we get to that? I love that Shinji as a protagonist so far is so different than I thought he was going to be in this series. I thought he was going to be more like Asuka going into this. No. It's such a crazy thing how different his character is than what I expected. But, okay, so Telex from Othello. Unit 2 is in the process of activation. Okay. And everybody I love that everyone turns in sync. It's so cinematic. And Misato has her head up against the glass like, really? We're going to see it in action? Misato, my girl. Nice going, Asuka. See, Asuka and Misato, they're very, very similar. Very similar. And they're like, no, abort the activation sequence. I love that there's this battle where Misato's like, don't worry about it, just launch. And he's like, I love it. I love this back and forth between them. And then Misato's like, this is an emergency. Who gives a damn about your procedures? And then that's when the other guy is like, it's still using B equipment. So apparently with the B equipment, it is not able to swim underwater. So falling into the sea would be bad. And then Asuka's response is like, well, then we just won't do that. And then Misato's like, oh, Shinji's there too. I was worried that Misato would be concerned about Shinji being inside the unit, but apparently that's what they wanted this whole time. So I guess she's not worried. And they're like 2 kids. She's like, this is a good chance to test it. Okay, so interesting. It seems like when the way that her and Akagi talked at the end, like they wanted these 2 to be able to sync up and possibly be able to control, like to work together with their EVA units, that's maybe part of it. I'm thinking. And so Masato's like, well, let's see if it works. Let's see if these 2 are compatible. And Shinji's like, oh my God. I love, it's so like stereotypical action superhero, but landing on the freighter and it has the cape and looks like a superhero and has 2 sets of eyes. Interesting. I love it. I love it an awful lot. It's just so superhero-esque. So yeah, so they basically have a minute before they get to the supply unit from the ship, the port that they brought. And they have an external power supply on the deck. Okay. And so what is she going to do? We're going to jump. And they basically just used the battleships and carriers like lily pads to just jump between, which is clever and it works. But I'm kind of with Ida. The humans that were in danger during this, and not only that, but all of the destruction that because for all we know, like 2 or 3 ships were destroyed by the Angel, but the amount of damage that the EVA unit caused the rest of them, I mean, oh my God. And they have the power supply in place, evacuate the flight deck, and it's ready for EVA landing, prepare for impact. Oh my God. And they're landing on the deck. And Shinji's just like, I can't do this. And of course, Toji's blushing as they land. That's great. But yeah, the planes falling into the ocean and the missiles, everything. It all falls into the sea. And Ida, what a waste. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Because even though they end up saving the day and destroying the Angel with the help, they basically sunk or damaged most of the UN's fleet, the Pacific Fleet. They sunk so many airplanes and missiles and everything. I'm like, there was a lot of money and damage done in 2 minutes by this EVA unit. That I'm with Ida. I'm like, that's a lot. And then, okay, switching to external power. All right, and can plug itself in. Okay. So there we go. We don't have any weapons. The prog knife will be more than enough. But it's not. It's not more than enough. It's not enough to stop this thing that is massive and looks like a giant manta ray, like mixed with a beluga. Uh-huh. Yeah, it looks like a beluga. And the captain's like, what are they going to do? And they're like, oh, hand-to-hand combat's the best way to defeat it. So that's what we're going to do. And and it just lands on top of them and destroys half the ship, all that fun stuff, and drags it into the ocean. It's huge. Good work on stopping it. It's not funny. The flight deck is a mess. Yeah. What a waste. And then it just breaks through so much and then gets tossed into the sea. Uh-huh. It's impossible to fight underwater with the B-type. And she's like, you never know unless you're going to try. And Misato's like, I'm with you on that mindset, girl, but I don't think it's going to work. I do love that where they ended up at on the ocean here. Because when they fell into the sea, I'm like, oh, well, the ocean's bottomless. Like, it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of meters. They're going to just sink to the bottom. But what it is, and they toss more planes in the sea. What a waste. And so, as they're hooked to the cable, I like that underneath them is like old Tokyo. So it's like an old city is like the battle area. It's really cool. And so then they had 1,200 meters of cable left. Okay. And so Misato's like, we'll manage somehow. I love that Misato's like, don't worry. We're used to all this thinking on the fly stuff all the time. We're if anything, competent under pressure. And then Shinji's like, I've got to do something. I do like that a lot. That Shinji basically takes a stand. I like this. I like that Shinji's like, I've got to do something. Our boy Shinji has grown, even though fundamentally as a character he is very much the same. He has grown so much over these last 8 episodes. Like, I love that Shinji has not become an Asuka by any means, but he has become someone that's like, no, I've got to do something. Like, surely there's something I can do to help. Like, he's not running away. He's not running. He's not hiding. He's just trying to actively think of something to do to help the situation. And I like that a lot. So yeah. And then the cable like reaches its end. It snaps. This thing having, the way that this angel is constructed is terrifying. Terrifying. And I feel for Ida's plight. He's got these discs. He's got to change out the cassette tapes in the camera. I really thought he was going to lose half those cassette tapes, like, during this whole battle. Because, like, the way that he was, like, fishing around, like, all those cassette tapes are going to drop out and he's going to lose all the footage that he took during this trip. But he doesn't. And he manages to keep it all. And that's when he notices a Yak 38 Custom, the aircraft leaving. And so this is probably my second favorite part of the episode is he's like, hey, Katsuragi. And she's like, Kaji. And you know that Misato thinks that Kaji is going to help them out. That he's brought this custom, like, flyer to come and help them stop the angel. She thinks he's being brave. And he's like, I've got something to deliver, so I'll be taking off now. And her face where she's like, you coward, you're running away? And he's like, okay, launch, bye. He's like, take care of the rest of this, Captain Katsuragi. And Toji's like, he ran away. And her eyes just twitching. So we established that Kaji's kind of a coward. He does run away. Interesting indeed. Interesting. Because on the surface, the funny thing is, on the surface, I would have likened Akagi to Rei of the 3. They seem like the most objective, cold, distant, and scientific of the 3. And at first glance, I would have acknowledged Misato to be like Asuka and Kaji to be like Shinji, but I don't think that's quite the case. I don't think we can totally say they're very similar because Misato sometimes is like Asuka, but sometimes Misato's a lot like Shinji. And Shinji is not like... Shinji's whole thing is not running away now, but that's what Kaji instantly does. So there are differences there. I love that both of them, that Asuka's like, I'll finish it off. Like, Asuka wants to do this all herself. And Shinji's like, I've been trying to tell you that you need some help. You can't just do this on your own. And he's like, what am I supposed to do? And she's like, you're being pretty pitiful for a third child. So they don't exactly gel at first. You know, Shinji's like, I don't know what to do, but we need to do something. Asuka's like, well, think. And by the end of it, they do sync up a bit, like for 7 seconds, as Misato notes. But God, so this angel, when you saw the little egg beak shaped head, spirited away head on top of it, I thought, oh, that's the mouth. No, the mouth inside of it, and there's like the thing that you're supposed to destroy inside of it. Yeah, and Shinji's just like, ugh, like that's terrifying. He's like, well, it is an angel, but that's terrifying. No, thank you. No, thank you. And it's tried to swallow them. And so then Misato and the captain get the idea. Toji's like, it's like we're fishing. And that gives Misato an idea. And so they're like, we're back in a pinch now. And so Misato, and again, Asuka's like, get off me. And he's like, well, I can't help it. You're the one that convinced me to come in here. And so Misato comes with a plan and tells him not to let it go and asks the captain for his cooperation. First and foremost, she's like, I'm requesting your cooperation. And when Misato gets serious, when Misato goes into competency mode, girl gets stuff done. And she, that tone shift, that shift in her demeanor, she looks at the captain, she's like, I need you to approve me to help you. And he's like, fine. And she lays down the plan. She says, a point-blank assault by 2 of the surviving battleships will scuttle 2 of the evacuated battleships along the umbilical cord and set a trap. So, oh, cool. We have the ship names. The BS Kentucky and the BS Illinois. Oh, look at that. Look at that. That's from around where I am, so that's funny. Fun times. During that time, Eva, too, will open the target's mouth. And both ships will rush in. So this is the sixth angel. And fire all their bow's current cannons. I want to point out, too, that the two ships that are going after it are the 65 and 66 with the sixth angel. Nothing biblical with that at all, right? And both ships will rush in. I love, there's the map of Tokyo underneath it. It's cool. And they fire all their bow turrets and then self-destruct, destroying the target. So, like, self-destruct the two battleships, the taxpayer money. And she's like, that's the only way we're going to destroy it. It's absurd, perhaps, but I don't think it's impossible. And they're like, I understand. Like, at this point, that's the only option they've got left. Oh, my gosh. So, yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there's maybe 7 or 8 yet left. And so they evacuate everybody from the ships. And they're like, what about the Eva? And she's like, oh, don't worry. They'll be fine. We'll request for more emergency funding to help fix it, right? Oh. And so, yeah. So Shinji takes over. Shinji basically leans over her to take control of the pilot seat. So, of course, she's mad because he's basically, like, in her crotch trying to pilot this thing. And she's, like, beating on him. And he's like, I'm trying to help. And she's like, do the two of you understand the operation? And he's like, I'll do my best. As Shinji's hair is getting pulled, he's like, I'll try, Miss Misato. She's like, I'm counting on you. And so, yeah, these two battleships going underwater. They've opened the Kingston valve and they're scuttling towards point Z and reversing the cable. When Misato gets competent, she's all about it. And then they get started to be, like, hoisted up. 70 seconds. How long are you going to stay there? Get off of me already. Yeah. And he's like, we've got to pry its mouth open sooner. We're going to be killed. Because they're trapped in its jaw right now. And ahead is like the red light that they have to destroy. Status in the angel's mouth. It's still not open. This part's really, really good. I love that as the battleships come closer. It's like all the tension building up and T-minus 50 seconds. And then they both decide that they have to work together in that moment. And so I love that she puts her hands over his. The target has passed beneath the tempest. You're not going to make it. She says, don't get any strange ideas, but it's like, Shinji's not. Trust me. He's like, about what? Yeah, Shinji, oblivious. No clue what's going on. She says, just focus your thoughts. And he's like, I know what to do. I love these two. And then they manage to do it. And both eyes lighting up. It's so symbolic. I love it. They managed to make it work. And then within the 15 seconds, when there was like 10 seconds left, they both think at the same time to open. And they managed to get the EVA unit to synchronize. And I love that they have the two sets of eyes, lifts up, and then that's a shot too with the battleships. And just all the teeth breaking on the angel. Like, it's clearly organic. Like, just the teeth breaking. And just everything. And then they fire. And it just blows it up from inside. And the EVA unit manages to land on the carrier. And then it just collapses. I was like, it was such a cool landing. And then it just goes and collapses. It's great. It's great. But they saved the day. Destroyed half the fleet, but we saved the day, right? As they make it into the new Yokosuka port, which was old Odawara. You certainly went all out. Yeah, and of course, Misato has to go hang out with the Kaji. And Misato's like, well, we should have anticipated underwater combat. And she's like, oh, you actually regret something? She's like, well, we got the data. That's all we needed, right? She's like, that's true. And that's when Akagi notices that this is really something special. Those two syncing up. And of course, Asuka's looking around like, oh, this is Japan. Cool. And I love that Toji, if you watch him, he glares back at her like, ugh. But then he looks up and he's like, they match. And then I love that Ida's taking the video footage and Shinji's like, please don't take the video footage of me like this. They broke their synchronization ratio records, didn't they? For 7 seconds. It must have been due to the danger. And then, of course, Asuka says, hey, where's Mr. Kaji? And so I was like, oh, he ran off. He's back at headquarters probably by now. And we cut straight to him. Looking hot, but looking sketch. Yeah, that side profile, that jaw. He's like, it was a pretty eventful trip. Was it caused by this, after all? Mm-hmm. And then I love that we don't see them open it up at first. We cut back to away from them in that tiny room, in that giant room with the tiny table, and you hear the case opening, but you don't see it. I love it. And then we cut to his expression, to Kaji's reaction. It's already restored itself this far. Aha! Okay. So we get this thing with Adam. It's already restored itself this far. It's frozen inside Durabacalite, but it's still alive. Oh, he's so... The expressions on his face in that scene are so, like, sinister. I'm like, but so hot. No! I'm totally crushing on Kaji, but it's just his expressions. The expressions they give him, they're so sinister and trickstery. He's a trickster. That's what it is. He has this, like, trickster kind of persona, and just the expressions, the animation on his face. Like, I don't trust him at all, but, yeah. Without a doubt, this is the keystone of the Human Instrumentality Project, isn't it? Yeah, sample A0. Oh, correct. This is the first human being. But it looks like an Eva. It looks like an Eva, doesn't it? Because it has like the big eye that Shinji saw, and like the head that's kind of like all gross and kind of disfigured, and it has the arms and legs. Is it not an Eva? It looks similar to that Eva unit, like the 01 unit. What does it say? Something. Who is... I want to say who... I want to see what that says. It says who... The word who, and then... Is it hell? Ring Y. There's the word Y in there with a question mark. There's the word Y, and it says Adam. Who is something? Hell... Does it say Ching Bing Y? I don't know what that says. We don't know yet, damn it. I can't quite see it. Oh man. This is Adam. Creepy. I'm not having it. And so then we cut back to the next day, back at school, and Toji saying she may have looked cute, but she was a real bitch. Surprise, boys. Guess who's going to be your new classmate? Yeah. And then I was like, well, we won't have to see her again. Famous last words. Yeah, the old Mr. Big Shot has to see her at work. And Shinji's like, are you talking to me? And then she shows up. And Toji's nightmare. Oh my god. Watch her and Toji like become a thing, right? By the end of this. And then she just saunters around. And Shinji's like, oh god. My name is Asuka Langley Soryu. Nice to meet you. I love her singing voice. It's cute. I cut the video too short, but right when it's getting, she says, I love you, and it's like in this cutesy voice. It doesn't match her persona with this at all. It's actually really great. I love it. But, oh my god. Okay. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if by the end of this series, Toji and her are like best friends. And he's like, I didn't want anything to do with her. And it's like, oh, you guys will probably be best friends by the end of this, you know. And poor Shinji. I don't know. I like, what a weird love triangle we're creating with... It's not even a love triangle because Shinji doesn't have any feelings for either her or... Shinji has no romantic feelings for either of these women, right? With Asuka, he doesn't know how to handle her because she's just like this fiery pistol and he's like, I don't know what to do around you. But they both have a sense of wanting to protect and defend other people. So that's where they connect. And Shinji does have a connection, I think, with Rei more personality-wise, but she's so cold and desolate in terms of emotionality that he's like, it's just, yeah, I think it'll be easier for him to connect with Asuka, but I think he'll connect more with Rey on like a deeper level. It'll just be harder to get there with her. But there is no love triangle at this point to me. I'm like, no. Shinji like had that compassion with Rey, but it was in a very non-sexual, non-romantic way. It was just like hello friend. Let me reach out and be a friend to you. Let's start by being friends, because Rey doesn't really have any. And then with Asuka, it seems more like a friend vibe too. So I don't sense it seems like a play on the romantic love triangle that you would see in a series, but not really, because there's not really any romance or sexual attraction between these characters. They're only 14. So if anything, the romantic stuff is left up to Misato and Kaji, but he's sketch. Oh, I love this episode so much. I feel like I was just like on adrenaline the entire time talking to you all. How long did I talk? Like it's been like an hour and 20 minutes. God. But yeah, this episode was great. I loved it. I'm really excited to see what happens in episode 9 now that Asuka is part of the crew. It's one more factor into the dynamic of everything. How's it going to change things? What's it going to do to like for these characters? How are they all going to interact with one another? And then now that Kaji is on board, Kaji's going to shake things up with that dynamic with Misato. What is Adam? How is it connected to the Eva units? There's so many questions, and I'm ready for them to be answered. So, in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I hope you enjoyed this reaction discussion. Please comment down below, but please no spoilers. And I will be back next week with episode 9 of Neon Genesis Evangelion.